Hello, in this set of series of videos, I would like to introduce to developing web applications using Python Django framework. Now, most of you, when you are building web applications, may already know how the web applications work, the life cycle of it, and it's important to understand how the computer networks work. For those of you who are experts in computer networks, how the IP works, IP addresses work, you may skip this video. For others, here is a quick overview, not the complete treatment of all the computer networks, but a quick overview. And just by understanding, this is just good enough to build sophisticated web applications. So when you build web services or web applications, the way how the web applications work is when you type in www.google.com, here is your browser is an application. It's doing certain things. It is reaching out to a web application and getting the data and then displaying the results here. So let's take a life cycle of what's really happening. So you have a browser on your computer. This is your computer, and you type www.google.com. It's a name that you type in. Your browser reaches out to a service or a server called a DNS server, domain name server, that asks, hey, what is the IP address for google.com? And your DNS server will respond back with an IP address, which I'm going to talk about very soon here. And let's say this is the IP address, and your computer will reach out to a computer on this IP address, listening to services on a particular port. Let's say port 80 or port 443 for secure service. And then there is an application which is waiting to listen to the request coming from the external browsers, and then responds back with a HTML file or something of that nature, and your browser will take it and displays it. In the big picture, that's what's really happening. And see, let's take a look at what say computer networks in a bigger picture. So let's say that when we talk about computer networks, we talk about two concepts. One is called private networks, and the other one is public networks. So when in your house, if you have a wireless router, let's say this is John's house, and then he has a wireless router, and then he stands up a couple of computers here, and these computers gets connection through the wireless router, and maybe a cell phone too. And then each one of this, when you connect to the wireless router, there is an address that gets connected or assigned to these machines. That may look like this. So something like that. And your computers can talk to each other through IP address. And then similarly, your neighbor may have another network. Maybe it is Katie. Katie has a network, and she may have several phones and computers and laptops. Each one will have its own IP. It could be the same IP, for example, or it could be different with the same prefix, but these kinds of addresses are called private IP addresses, or these are private networks. So the computers within the network can talk to each other, but they cannot talk across the networks. In order to talk across, we need computers listening on what's known as a public networks or public IP addresses. So for example, if you have a google.com, it has a public IP address, and then you can talk to that computer using its public IP address. So one way to check what's the public IP address for a Google on, if you have a Mac, I can use ns lookup google.com, and then as you can see, if I look it up, and it'll tell me the IP address for this is 142.250.72 and 40. All right. Okay. And given that, let's say we call it as, I don't exactly remember, let's just pretend that this is a public IP address. So this is the way how you do that. When you build web applications, you build applications to and run it on a public server or a private server, right? If when you run your server on a public server, it will have a public IP, and it can listen to applications through different ports. Each computer has 32,000 ports approximately to listen to, and each one of them is addressed to a port. So when an application talks to another computer through the service called IP services, they need both the IP address and the port number. Let's say this port number is 8013. So your browser running on your computer can talk to this using the IP address that's given here using 8013. I will write it as :8013. And before it does that, when you type in google.com, it reaches out to DNS server, which keeps a track of all the domain names to IP address mapping, and that's how you get the IP address, and using that you can communicate across the network to talk to the web applications. For this development, what you would do is, in order for you to develop these applications, it's too much of an overhead to deploy it on a public server. So most likely what you would do, you would run it on a computer, and you would deploy a web application, your web application, and then you will allow your web application to listen on a particular port. I'm still going to use 8013 for the purposes of this, and there are many things you can do. You can open up multiple ports to listen to, or there could be other applications that can listening on other ports, for example 80. This could be your Apache server. So when I write this kind of a symbol, what it means is there is a service that's waiting for your users to connect, and your other users can connect using your computer IP address. Let's call it as 10.0.0.10, and other computers within your network can reach out and then say they can talk to your service. There is one special name that you want to think about, or I want to introduce you to, called a local host. Also, it has a special, every computer has a special IP that's given like this, 127.0.0.1, and the name for this is localhost. So you can actually, to test how the external users work and how the computers, your application responds, you can build an application and connect to your own server using localhost :8013. And also another way of connecting it is, you can start up a browser on your computer and then type in localhost and :8013. Your browser will do the same connection, get the data, and then displace it. So that's the anatomy or the life cycle of web applications. Next, we will talk about how to build these web applications. So just to show the concept of localhost, here I can say ping localhost. As you can see here, ping is a command that you can send to show or the test if the computer is alive. And you can see that it's 127.0.0.1 is a local IP address that responds to the ping. And this is the machine that I'm working on. That's my local host. So that's about it for this, and we'll see how the Django applications are built.